Greetings, gentle listener. I am Baldermort. Today, I would like to introduce you to Trazyn the Infinite, the most prominent member of the Nihilakh Dynasty. The Nihilakh Dynasty is based from the crown world of Geeden, under the command of Pharaoh Crispek. The Nihilakh Dynasty are known as the Sentinels of Eternity. Regal and glorious in battle, the Nihilakh are fiercely territorial. Only at the close of the 41st millennium have they turned their attention outwards, planning a new campaign of slow, relentless expansion. Woe to the army that trespasses upon the domains of the Nihilakh. In times of antiquity, the dynasty built vast treasure worlds filled with wealth plundered from 1,000 civilizations. When the Nihilack awoke from hibernation, it was to find their once mighty realm in ruins. Looking inwards, the dynasty gathered what strength they still possessed to their own crown world, Geeden. Now they jealously guard the remaining wonders of their empire, shoring up their borders against all intrusion. The dynasty's cryptechs have recently begun the construction of strange monolithic arrangements along the frontier of Nihilakh space, though what purpose these creations serve is as yet unclear. It is said that the splendors of the Nihilakh treasure houses eclipse those of all other dynasties combined, and their armaments attest to this. Arrogant and proud, the dynasty's overlords ensure that none forget the great wealth of their people, nor the military strength that comes from it. They have their cryptechs work precious turquoise and jewels into the armor of the legions, and often carry prized relics into battle, borne upon their war machines as reminders of their ancient triumphs and glory. Greatest among the dynasty's treasures is the Yith Seer, the preserved head of an alien prophet who was the last of its race. Using neurographic resonators to peer into the prophet's mind, the overlords have witnessed the future of their race. It has to be a future of unavoidable combat and conflict, for the Nihilakh are gathering their legions for war. The regal gold and turquoise of the Nihilakh are worn not just by their highest rank members, but also its warriors, for its overlords would find it distasteful to wage war with weapons that did not in some way proclaim their considerable wealth. The overlords and lords of Nihilakh wear personal glyphs reflecting a segment of their dynasty's icon. Only the Pharaoh is permitted to bear the icon in its entirety. Often, this personal symbol will signify the part of his dynasty's domain that the lord presides over. On lesser warriors, these glyphs are worn in gold upon turquoise. On more valued servants, these colours are reversed. The Nihilakh favour a strict military hierarchy. Their phalanx markings are simplified versions of the overarching dynastic glyph. Amongst the many artifacts of the Nihilakh dynasty, the Time Splinter Cloak is their most precious. Fashioned by the chronomancers of the Nihilakh dynasty, this relic grants the bearer the ability to alter their destiny. This glittering shroud is formed from slivers of crystallized time, and the bearer can expend the power of these shards to glimpse a matrix of potential futures. The knowledge granted by this foresight allows them to perform incredible feats in battle. The Nihilakh dynasty differs from others because of its institution of aggressively territorial tactics. Regal and arrogant, the warriors of this proud dynasty will not give a single inch to their foes. They stand their ground defiantly, unleashing formidably accurate hail of fire that cleanses the stain of the lesser races from their rightful lands. Though he be not the actual Pharaoh, the person who is considered to be the most important, and certainly the best known, of all of the Nihilakh dynasty is Trazyn the Infinite, the self-styled archivist of the Solemnus Galleries. Trazyn is a preserver of histories, artifacts, and events. The vast and numberless vaults burrowed through the tomb world of Somnus are crowded with technology so rare and sublime that any Adeptus Mechanicus tech priest would give the lives of several close colleagues just to know that they existed. It is a hoard ever growing, for history is always on the march, and Trazyn strives to keep apace. Alas, not many worlds willingly give up the artifacts Trazyn seeks, selfishly clutching on to the few meaningful things in their civilization, rather than offering them up to be preserved through the ages. In such circumstances, Trazyn has little choice but to muster his armies and take them by force. If this results in the destruction of a city, a planet, or an entire sector, so be it. Most impressive of all Somnus's wonders are the prismatic galleries, winding chambers of statuary recapturing events from history that Trazyn deems worthy of preservation. The prismatic galleries are populated not with mere sculpture, but living beings transmuted into hard light holograms by arcane technology. Some such statues are nothing less than the original enactors of history, frozen in the moment of triumph or defeat, and whisked away to Solnus to forever stand as testaments to their deeds. Occasionally a statue may be destroyed by cruel happenstance, but such events drive Trazyn to frustration, for he must halt his search for fresh acquisitions and seek out replacements. Of course, few of the statues are replaceable, but there are no rules to Trazyn's galleries, save that those that he himself decides upon. If he decrees that one of the hardlight tableaux must fulfill its function with substitutes, however inaccurate, then he will acquire them. Fully 1/10 of his Death of Lord Solar Macarius gallery is populated by holographic Imperial Guardsmen whose uniforms are 300 years astray from historical fact, but Trazyn cares more for the spectacle than the details. Once Trazyn has resolved to refresh his galleries, he does so with great urgency. Depending on the scale of losses, replenishment might be achieved by a few possible kidnappings, by low-flying night sides, or possibly through a more substantial mobilization of force. Nor are Tomb Worlds immune to Trazyn's attention. Trazyn makes little distinction between artifacts held on alien worlds and those possessed by his own kind. The resulting indiscreet liberations have rendered him unwelcome on several Tomb Worlds. He is forbidden entirely from the catacombs of Mandragora under pain of death, and permitted on Mobius on the strict understanding that his arrival will only benefit the Nihilakh Dynasty. That Trazyn is rarely discovered before he is ready to make his move says rather more about the insular nature and selective knowledge of other Necrons than it does his own aptitude for subterfuge. Even on orc-held planets, Trazyn goes to great pains to keep his identity a secret. He knows full well that his activities have come to the attention of certain rogue traders and inquisitors. After all, the Imperium's tangled history presents something of an irresistible lure. Nonetheless, while he remains confident in his ability to outwit the plots and snares of primitive humans, Trazyn's paranoia is still his true master. Trazyn commonly conducts his campaigns through surrogates, substitute bodies into which he can pour his will. Should the body suffer catastrophic damage, Trazyn's essence simply returns to his true form, or into another surrogate. Many of these are actually Necron lords or overlords in their own right who, unbeknownst to them, have had their bodies subverted by Trazyn. Should he need to occupy such a body, he can do so easily, as he could any other surrogate. The regular occupant's will is suppressed, and the body itself instantly morphs into an exact facsimile of his primary form. Yet these days of caution and plotting are fast passing by. The raucous din of war grows louder in every corner of the galaxy, consuming temples, cities, worlds, and even entire races long before Trazyn has had the opportunity to catalogue and rescue all that is worth saving. Thus, for the first time in millions of years, Trazyn is mobilizing the full might of Solemnus, the better to secure entire planets from the onset of ignorant barbarians. Already a score of the Imperium's worlds are under occupation by Trazyn's forces, the inhabitants subjugated by his implacable minions. The legions of Solemnus show no sign of stopping. The prismatic galleries. These are some of the most prized possessions of Trazyn and consist of holographic events recapturing events from history deemed worthy of preservation. These galleries are not populated by mere sculpture, but by conscious living beings transmuted into holographs themselves. the last High Council of Itere Craftworld, an exhibition showcasing the massacres of Tragus, a warband of orcs attacking an unknown blue-shelled invertebrate xenos species, the Catacombs of Calth during the Underground War, an exhibition labelled The Death of Lord Solar Macarius, a Catan shard that Trazyn has called the source of his power and the crown jewel of his collection, a Wraithbone Choir of Altansar, the preserved head of Sebastian Thor, the ossified husk of an enslaver, a giant man wearing Baroque-powered armour, Brother Cassiel of the Blood Angels, who was seconded to the Death Watch. His face was frozen in a moment of fear, the Karnak World Spirit, the shrine by which all Eldar souls of that planet were held. Katajan regiments in their entirety are held there also. A temporal device containing the Tyranid invasion of Vuras has been saved by Trazyn himself. Horus Heresy-era Ultramarines, lost Tanith regiments, salamanders thought lost during the Clovian disaster, a Custodes, the Bell of St. Gersal, and that is a story we shall get to in a moment. He also has other things of wonder and terror. He used to have a stockpile of uncorrupted Emperor's Children gene seed, but traded this with Fabius Bile for a perfect clone of the Primarch Fulgrim. He has Harlequin troops, a damaged but still functioning webway portal, but by far the most interesting to me, Baldermort, is a Krork, in power armor more advanced than any used by the present Astartes. The luminaries of the Nihilakh Dynasty. The other members of the dynasty are not as high profile as Trazyn, but no less important. Their pharaoh is Crispek. Recently, he has put an end to the historic isolationism of the dynasty and ordered his legions to begin a campaign of expansion. Amun-Taef is a Necron overlord of the Nihilakh Dynasty whose forces clashed with the Adeptus Custodes shield host known as the Fury of Terror sometime after the Great Rift's creation. Despite also having the aid of Trazyn the Infinite, Amun-Taef's forces were easily defeated by the Custodes, who were led into the battle by Captain General Trajan Valoris himself. Kipak is a Necron overlord of the Nihilakh Dynasty. He and his forces were awoken by excavations on the mining world of Adakor in the 984th year of the Millennium 41, resulting in the Adakor exterminations. Tarek, also known as Tarek the Undying, is of the Nihilakh Dynasty also, though at one point he was a mighty overlord who ruled over many of the Nihilakh tomb worlds. Following the Starheart Wars against the Eldar, his power base was shattered, and he has since plotted his revenge. Now ruling over the tomb world of Kadrim, Tarek largely ignores the puny human settlements on the world and set about reactivating a millennia-old superweapon in order to carry out the wishes of Pharaoh Crispek in launching a new wave of expansion. However, when Kadrim came under assault from both Orc and White Scar forces, Tarek was forced to act against the invaders. In the resulting Battle of Kadrim, Tarek was nearly victorious. However, his personal Catacomb command barge was destroyed by a Space Marines dreadnought in the final assault against the fleeing White Scars. As he self-repaired, a volley of melter torpedoes from an orbiting strike cruiser vaporized the Overlord. And so, gentle listener, we draw it all together. Trazyn is estimated to have lost nearly half of his collection due to the destruction wrought by the Bell of St. Gestal, with its 13 tolls marking the coming of the 13th Black Crusade. Despite being in a container as secure as a stasis crypt, the bell set off shock waves which increased with each ring, an impossibility that Trazyn is attempting to work out, and one that forced him to Cadia to investigate. The destruction of his collection, its halls, and even the world on which it resided was catastrophic. Some of the stasis fields burst, and segments of his collections went on rampages and destroyed even more of his life's work. As such, the Great Collector may change tack. In his desperation to make up for the damage done to his collection, he could decide that quality must replace quantity. If this is so, then nobody and nothing in the galaxy is safe. Trazyn is now an unpredictable, erratic, and very real threat to every political entity in the galaxy. In his wake he could leave a shattered faction, as each of their leaders could be entered onto his list to be acquired at any time, for each in their own right are unique, and now more so than ever. Trazyn collects the rarest of the rare, the unique and interesting, and he will not be gainsaid. None can know what the future will bring, or if the forces of the Imperium, Eldar, Tau, Chaos or Orc can stop the armies of the Necrons. But what is known is that if the Nihilack and Trazyn strike in surprise with enough force, then there is little that can stop them. When prepared, perhaps, but if not even warned, unlikely at best, laughable at worst. For which army encampment, which bastion or base could resist the infiltration of 100 score death marks, or 1,000 Lichguard and 10 times that number of wraiths stalking their halls and corridors in the blink of an immortal eye? Who could resist Trazyn when he is roused to collect? For there are so many rare and unique individuals now walking the galactic stage. It only takes one informant, one mistake, to draw any of these luminaries to the attention of the Collector. What would happen if Commander Farsight does indeed develop an affinity with the warp in the Psychic Awakening? The first of his species to do so, could the Enclaves stop the forces of the Nihilack? What would happen if Trazyn heard of Ivrain, the first Eldar awoken by Inyad? What would happen to her fledgling state, were she to be removed now at its birth? What would happen if Trazyn heard of Magos, who had broken every rule in the Mechanicus's book, the only Magus said to have strayed into the diabolic and demonic and returned to the service of the Imperium? What would happen if he came for Belisarius Cawl, the only man in the Imperium willing to innovate? What if Trazyn heard of the oldest and most powerful Eldari Farseer since the War in Heaven? His time. What would the capture of Eldred do to the self-image of the Eldar? Would it collectively rouse them, combining the craft worlds to war? Or would it throw them back into the pitiful mourning that they have been wallowing in since their fall? What would happen if Trazyn heard of Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka, potentially the first orc to evolve into a Krork since the Beast, and certainly the first two since Trazyn has awoken? A very viable target, for the Necrons hate and fear the Krork in equal measure. What better way to stilt their rise and add to his collection than to capture the Lord of Wars? What would happen if Trazyn decided his one Primarch trophy should be matched by a demon-raised one? Would Angron, Fulgrim, Mortarion, Magnus, or any of their ilk be safe? Or perhaps Keros Fateweaver, Kabanda, or even the War Master's beloved sword, Drachnien? Could even Abaddon gainsay Trazyn? Could a greater demon? What if he decided that a risen Primarch, one that should be dead and one risen by a Xenos race no less, is a morsel he cannot live without being in his collection? Would Reboot Gilliman be safe? Or perhaps the truly immortal Primarch, the perpetual Vulcan? Can he find him? Would he then attempt again to gain the weapons of Vulcan as he has done before and try to collect the entire set? Or perhaps he aims even higher. For the ultimate horror, the ultimate blasphemy, the ultimate jewel in the crown. What if Trazyn the Infinite decides that the ultimate weapon of Ka, the first and only of his kind, the most powerful psyker of all and any time, is his next target? What if he were to gather every last warrior, weapon and ship at his command, every last sinew of his strength for one great glorious raid? What if Trazyn decides he needs to have in his collection the Emperor of Mankind? Gentle listener, I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. If you have enjoyed my introduction to Trazyn the Infinite and the Nihilakh Dynasty, then please consider liking and subscribing. I will be covering all of the dynasties and elements of the Necrons, along with, in time, the rest of the lore of the Warhammer 40K universe, and I would not want you to miss out.